Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest. Absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old-timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southernappalachianherbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs. Hey y'all, welcome to this week's show. We're going to get into some really interesting herbs and wild edibles today. Wild edible plants, from my spring foraging book. First of all, I need to ask y'all a favor. Been meaning to do this for a while. Podcasts are tricky things. You don't get a lot of promotion from anyone, other than yourself. There's no one really incentivized to spread the word about your podcast. And they kind of go like up and down and up and down. Like one day I may have, I'll just say several hundred people listen to the show, sometimes a lot more than that. And then for the next week, it may just like totally drop off. The algorithms change. There may be like 30 people or less that listen a day. It's cool. I mean, that's just the way the algorithms work. I mean, whether it's Spreaker, which is my hosting company, or it's through like, Apple or, what are the big ones? I'm just totally blanking. There's so many. And I'm on all of them. iHeartRadio is a big one. Different ones. They'll kind of like push somebody up and then they'll just drop them. And it's like, in order to promote another podcast, they have to take some away from, the one they were promoting last week. So it's really weird. I mean, there's a continual growth rate to the podcast. I really see this in subscriptions to the Southern Appalachian Herb, or Judson Carroll Master Herbalist is actually what it's called, newsletter. It's, continual growth rate, and that's cool. But I also have to pay for hosting, and it's good when I get a lot of listeners that help sell books. Really, the podcast breaks even. I'm good with that. I'd love to actually make a little profit at it, but it breaks even. When I have more listeners, I sell more books, or I get more paid subscribers to the Substack newsletter. That's actually how I'm making a living. And so what I'm going to ask, I mean, it's very simple. You know how like when you go to a website and they have a little icon that says, buy me a cup of coffee? Well, I'm not going to ask you to do that. I'm not going to ask you to buy me a cup of coffee. I'd love to say, buy my groceries or put gas in my vehicle, but that's not my style. If you like the podcast, just please share it with a friend. That's it. It's that simple. If they're like, if you enjoy listening to Southern Appalachian Herbs podcast, or my religious podcast, The Uncensored Catholic, just email it to somebody email the link and say, I really enjoy this, please listen to it, or if you want to, I'm just saying, refer, make a reference, right? If, I don't know, last week the podcast numbers were really down, and, it bothers me when they're down, because I see book sales go down as well, and it wasn't good. Probably only about 500 people listened to the show the entire week, and that's really down. So somebody's messing with the algorithm somewhere in the system. I send the newsletter out to, a couple thousand people, And so normally I would get that many just from clicks for the newsletter. Not everybody's going to open the newsletter and click. I get that. Not everybody actually has time. They might read an article, but they might not listen to the podcast that week. That's cool. Um, Everybody has their own schedule, and it's fine. I don't worry about that. But when I see like a massive drop off in numbers, I've seen it before. Like when I started being censored when I was talking about Anthony Fauci and COVID, vaccines and such. Yeah, I saw numbers like one day I'm way up and everything's going great, and next day they banned me from YouTube, they banned me from Facebook. Google was definitely limiting me coming up in search results. I can't prove that. I think it, so I'm not making an accusation. I do know. I mean, I got a message from YouTube saying your videos, my podcast actually, has been removed from YouTube due to what, disinformation or whatever, right? I got the same thing on Facebook after like 10,000 people I didn't know started calling me racist for no reason. I mean, I say I think the COVID virus came from a lab in Wuhan, and suddenly 10,000 people call me racist. Okay, I know what was going on there. Last week's show was pretty darn innocuous. Innocuous? Is that right? Harmless. I mean, I was literally just talking about what? Big leaf aster, and I didn't even make my usual mistake, which is calling it big ass leafter. I mean, I don't know why. Somehow that got stuck in my head. And when I tell somebody try it, I call it big ass leafter. But it's big leaf aster as a wild edible. And I got into, some really interesting herbs. I mean, we talked about basswood, linden flower. We talked, let's see, that was also, I guess, in the edible category. What else did we talk about? We talked about origeron. No, it wasn't Ridgeron. It was dog fennel. Yeah, absolutely. But we got into the entire, was it Epilobium, Eupatorium, I'm sorry, Eupatorium family, which contains some of the most useful herbs in America. So really, I'm thinking if you're talking about Eupatoriums, which include, boneset and, some of the most important antiviral, fever-reducing, febrifuge, whatever you want to call them, herbs known to man, I really actually expected to see much bigger numbers last week, and I instead saw like a dramatic drop off. I mean, like, the algorithm's kind of climbing up, like it's climbing upstairs, and then boom, you're in the basement. I have no idea what's going on. Not complaining, I pray and trust everything will work out great with the show. I have actually one of the, a very popular herbal podcast, but for suddenly the numbers just drop into the basement. Um, Whatever. I'm not going to get conspiratorial. I'm not going to say someone's doing it. I think the algorithms that the big distributors, the big search engine companies use have turned against me this week. That's cool. Okay. It happens. It's not cool. Actually, it's really pretty, it sucks, actually. And there's nothing I can do about it. I can't sue Amazon, and I can't sue Apple, and I can't sue, go through the list. The big guys, the ABC companies, the alphabet companies. Um, there are people that do big class action lawsuits. I was actually part of one when YouTube was withholding ad revenue from people, and I got like $5 for it or something after they stole literally several hundred or several $1,000s for me. Fraudulently, they were proved in court to be messing with the algorithms again. So, I don't really have a recourse. But you know what I got? I got you folks. I got my listeners. Just all I'm asking you to do is recommend my podcast. If you think it's worthy and if you think you know someone that might be interested. Just say, here's a link to this guy's podcast. And it doesn't have to be this episode. It could be last week's or the week before or a year ago. I've been doing it for over 3 years, Just pick one and say if you're on Facebook or Twitter or if you just want to email it to some friends. I like the show. I found this interesting. I found this useful. I think you may like this podcast. If I mean, even with my numbers from last week, if 10% of y'all would do that, my podcast would grow by 1,000 listeners, easy in a week. And that would mean the world to me. And it doesn't cost you anything. And I understand, nobody wants to be thought of as a spammer or all that. So I'm literally just saying, if there is a podcast you found interesting and useful, and you know of someone who would actually benefit or be interested in it, just please give me a reference. That's it. You know, if you want to subscribe to my Substack newsletter as a paid subscriber, fantastic. If you want to buy one of my books, I think Spreaker is actually going to start an option of saying, like, basically a give me a cup of coffee option, send me a couple bucks if you thought this was worthwhile. I'm not asking you to do any of that, okay? Great if you want to buy one of my books. You ever see me at an event or see me on the street? I'll be glad to sign it. I mean, buy a spoon if you like my woodwork. If you can't afford anything, and I've been through some very hard financial times, especially around 2008 and such, especially around COVID when my business was just killed by the COVID shutdowns. Couldn't afford to support the people I wanted to support, and I would have supported, right? I understand, totally. But, it doesn't cost anything just to say on your social media or send an email to someone, I like this guy's show, give it a listen. Or you might find this useful for whatever reason. If you know that person has a health condition and I mentioned something about an herb that may actually help them, you can help two people at once. You can help me and your friend. So if you could do that, I'd really appreciate it. And I'll try not to bring this up again, for at least unless they keep doing this to me. They keep reducing my listenership, because that's not fun. It's not fun at all. Trying to make a living here. Gotta put food on the table, and these tech companies can just take it away at the blink of an eye, literally. We may talk about that sometime. I am very against the digital dollar, because literally, every purchase you make can be monitored, and if someone doesn't like your politics or they could actually just zero out your bank account or put a limit on the amount of money you could spend or what items you could buy. I mean, what if we had, this is a hypothetical scenario. What if the next president isn't Donald Trump? And I hope and pray he is, and will do everything I can to make sure he is elected. What if it's a big, gun-grabbing, Second Amendment liberal? And they transitioned us from the paper dollar to a digital dollar. And of course, gun sales are already incredibly heavily regulated. And they say, no, so-and-so, you don't get to buy bullets anymore. You can have all the guns you want because, the Supreme Court might challenge us on banning gun sales. But of course, they could actually, do that as well. But what if they say, you've got a 9mm pistol and you only get 20 rounds per year. Or you bought a couple boxes of ammo last year and we don't think you need any more bullets. Well, it's actually not a crazy idea. What if you got an AR-15 and they ban the ammo for that? They've actually tried to do that in several states. They say, well, the Constitution protects guns, but we can limit the sale of ammo. That's been done. If we have a digital dollar, they could do it with the click of a button. And you'd go down to your sporting goods store, hopefully you don't buy from Walmart, hopefully you go to a private seller, and you go down to your gun shop and you say, I want a couple of boxes of 12 gauge and 12 gauge shells. And they say, nope, declined. No money from your account, whether from your debit card or your credit card or using your cell phone, is allowed to buy 12 gauge rounds. Well, yeah, you've got a gun. You got nothing to put in it. Unless you learn to make your own ammo, which, we could talk about that sometime as well. But I'm not an expert. No, I'd really need to get an expert on reloading and such. But, yeah, I mean, they can do this. You remember, when they had the big rally of truckers up at the Canadian border against the vaccine mandates. People tried to send them money, and they took the money. They confiscated it. They shut down the account. Give, Send, Go, and different ones. GoFundMe, I guess, was probably the big one. People donated money for the truckers, and they took it right out of there. They confiscated it. Um, Shoot, I mean, look what they're doing to Trump. I mean, if we go to a digital dollar, I have serious concerns. Um, yeah, and they'll say it's, we need to track money because of tax evasion, or maybe drug dealers. We need to track the money that comes in and out of drug dealers or organized crime. But no, it's going to hit you. Someone's going to be monitoring every single penny you spend, and they can shut your account. They can lock it, like they did with the truckers. They've done that before. It's the precedent's been set. They could limit what you could buy. Wow. I mean, yeah, we could talk about this. There's no topic that's really off limits on the Southern Appalachian Herbs podcast, and that's even more true for my Catholic podcast, the Uncensored Catholic. I just, I try to stick to the, we're talking about plants in the herbal podcast. We're talking about herbs and we're talking about edible plants. But, it's not off limits unless it's, obscene. I don't talk about anything obscene. Not intentionally, anyway. Sometimes you say things that people take the wrong way, but, But anyway, the bottom line for that is please give me a recommendation if you like the show. It won't cost you a thing. It will take you 5 seconds. And it could literally be for me, being able to buy groceries or not. So, this is actually my job. I don't have a lot of control over it. It's literally up to you whether I prosper or not. And don't make me go into a Jimmy Swaggart. What was it he said one time? I think it was late '80s. It was if people didn't send him so many $1,000, God was going to strike him dead. I mean, it was. Yeah. Anyway, Jimmy Swaggart was quite a character, wasn't he? Boy, he hated Catholics. No doubt about it. I mean, he was extremely. I mean, as a convert to Catholicism, as a Catholic who wears the label proudly, man, he hated Catholics. But he was also Jerry Lee Lewis's cousin and Mickey Gilley's cousin. He was a pretty darn good musician himself, and he was very entertaining. I mean, you had to at least appreciate the show. But I don't mean to offend anybody. I'm just telling you that man did not like Catholics. Anyway, Thibodaux, Louisiana. That's where they were all three from. Thibodaux, Louisiana. Three of the greatest, truly, greatest American talents ever born. You can absolutely look at him as an orator, as a inspirational speaker, and yeah, he probably did help some folks. I mean, I'm not saying he was a bad guy. He just, was a little misguided in some ways. But I love Jerry Lee Lewis's music. I mean, from the Sun Years and rockabilly, but especially the country music he did in the 70s and 80s. That man was a natural, what do you call it, an idiot savant? I mean, probably had an IQ in the 30s, but I mean, he was absolutely a genius as a musician and singer. If you've never listened to his country music, you only know him from like Great Balls of Fire and Whole Lot of Shaking Going On. Pull up She Even Woke Me Up to Say Goodbye. Wow. Wow. My favorite being Old Piano. I actually bought, they're on that record. Okay, I know I'm wandering off topic here. But Jerry Lee Lewis put out a phenomenal record of country and Dixieland music under an album called The Old Piano. I think it was Who's Gonna Play This Old Piano? That was the title track. And on it was this beautiful upright, it's actually called an upright grand piano. And I tracked it down. They were made in 1900 by the Brombach Company. It was a one-off label. The oak, I mean, it's just incredible upright piano. The old-fashioned, like you would see in an old saloon or something, upright piano with these thick white oak, hand-carved, American-made. Everything on this is made by hand in America from 1900. Oak panels, brass frame. I mean, pure, ivory and ebony on the keyboard, brass pedals. And this is instrument the brass. This is the same kind of brass you'd make a trumpet out of. I'm a music geek. I totally go in for this kind of thing. And my mother's best friend's mother actually had one about 10 years ago, and she was in a nursing home, and I was visiting. She was a great woman. I love to cook, and I had spent many, many hours with her talking recipes when she was in her 90s. She taught me a lot about cooking. She was a friend of Justin Wilson, by the way. Her cousin was actually Justin Wilson's neighbor, the New Orleans Cajun chef that used to be on PBS, another one of my heroes. Totally off the topic, but she had one, a 1900 Brombach. It wasn't in great shape. It had been shipped down, still had the shipping tag in it from when it was shipped down from New York by train. And I think I paid her, asked me if I wanted to buy it, and I said, absolutely. And, it's back around '08, and I was pretty broke, and I said, I can only come up with maybe $300, maybe 400, I think. And she said, that's 400 I don't have, and it's not doing anybody any good. And I said, well, here you go. And it was like literally the last dollar in my bank account when I did this. And I got her son to help me load it on the back of the truck. And, I've done a little work on it. I still need to do, it needs to be tuned. I need to replace the felt on the hammers and a couple other things. A couple of the keys just kind of stick. I need to kind of go in. There was some, I guess you use the graphite just to lubricate it, make it smooth. It's the exact same piano as on Jerry Lee Lewis's old piano album, and it is so cool. I mean, the thing weighs like at least 3,000 pounds. It is literally, imagine, Baldwin grand piano. If you stood it upright, right, so it's not like horizontal, it's standing up. If you open the front of the piano, you're literally looking at a grand piano standing on its end. And then it's got the keys for an upright piano. It is so beautiful. And if I ever get settled and I can fix this thing up, my word, this is, if you've seen old videos of Fats Waller playing piano, he was playing a very similar instrument, probably a different company. But, those old names, the old instrument companies, they were just like kind of factories where craftsmen would work. And this is true of guitars, mandolins, banjos, you name it. This same company might be making an Orpheum, a Gibson, a Brombach. In this instance, that name was bought by a Japanese company, and they've given it a bad reputation. But at the time, they could be making a Baldwin or a Steinberg, whatever, in the exact same factory, and they just would put a label on it, and for whatever store was selling it, essentially. So, that's one thing I love about old instruments, old banjos, old mandolins. You might get a handmade instrument for if you really do your research, less than $100. Well, take my banjo, for instance, my tenor banjo. It's officially a Bruno. Bruno was like essentially a store brand made by Epiphone. Epiphone, back when Epiphone was a better company in terms of banjo and guitar than Gibson. Epiphone was eventually bought by Gibson. They kind of contracted out to a Japanese company. Totally ruined the brand. But I think what was his name? Stefanos Epanopoulos or something. I mean, he was a Greek instrument builder. That banjo I bought for $75. And it's a legit mahogany with rosewood fretboard, bell brass metal, made by hand in the Epiphone company. Literally, the same instrument with an Epiphone name on it instead of the Bruno would be worth probably $5,000. I got it for $75, and it's the exact same instrument. Look, if you're looking for, people say buy gold, do this. Antique instruments, if you do your research, there's a lot of value to be made in them. I mean, my guitar, it's a Lervet. It's one of the first that Lervet built. I paid brand new $600 for it. The most expensive thing I had ever bought until I bought my first car, obviously, and still the most expensive instrument I've ever bought. Bought it when I was a kid. Worked all year to save up for it, and my mom gave me some money, and I got this instrument. It was I got it. It was about probably retailing for around 1,000. I got it for 600, so I felt like I got a good deal. And literally, I played that guitar for every day since. It is like a piece of me. It's like, Willie Nelson's Martin. I'm never going to part with it. Right now, it would appraise for probably $3,000. So I made a good investment, right? It's worth 5 times what I paid for it. Even my mandolin, which I actually had some older mandolins, some really nice mandolins I sold when I needed the money back in '08. There was this company called Kentucky, and I'll give this as a recommendation. Someone asked me the other day, what kind of mandolin would you buy if you didn't want like a beginner's model, you want something to step up? And I said, go for Kentucky. They are made in China, yeah, but they're made of actual real hardwoods. There's a spruce top, maple back, real wood, quality instrument. I paid $50 for it. I mean, literally. I sold my mandolins. I thought, I want a mandolin just to be able to play. This looks like a quality instrument, even though it's, Chinese made. And I try not to do business with China. It was a guy who had bought it and was selling it used. I paid $50 for it. Set it up. You got to set it. You have to set up a mandolin to play right. It's sort of like a violin, okay? The bridge has to be in the right position. Everything has to be right. Sometimes you have to file down a fret or tap one in. It's one of those things. It's called fret dressing. You can pay somebody $100 to do it, or you can pull up a video on YouTube and learn to do it yourself. You get some feeler gauges like you used to use on a vehicle when you were adjusting a carburetor. It's not rocket science. Plays like a dream. I mean, literally, this $50 mandolin is a better instrument than the really rather expensive mandolins I used to collect and don't have anymore. And I looked the other day, I paid $50 for it, and now it's worth about, $300. So, I'm not going to make a fortune off of it, but if you look into antique instruments, there's actually a great deal of value to be had there. And, it's actually probably a safer investment than most things people speculate on. So I'm just going to throw that out there. Another thing, every now and then, if I want to pick up something, I see a really good deal, and I see it as an investment, something I can hold on to. Actually, something I'm probably never going to sell because I'm really kind of particular about things. When I only buy something I really like, and then I don't want to part with it. If I had kids, God willing, I ever have kids, I'd love to actually get married and have kids one day. This would be something I'd give them as part of their inheritance, would be antique pocket watches. You'd be amazed. And fountain pens as well. That's another one. You'd be amazed. Antique pocket watches and fountain pens, anything made before about 1960. These are handmade by craftsmen. I mean, they have precious metals in them. They actually have jewels in them. You just poke around in some junk shops or look online, like eBay or whatever. You could spend 20 or 30 bucks and you can have something would actually be worth to a collector several hundred, and in a couple of decades, you could probably make 10 or 20 times what you paid for it. And that's especially true as we look at an uncertain future. It's a proven fact that solar flares could wipe out all electronic devices on Earth in the blink of an eye. And we're actually past due for a solar flare. There hasn't been one since, mid-late 1800s, when a solar flare literally set all the telegraph wires on fire. That's not even a man-caused event. That's just a natural event that usually happens every 50 to 100 years. Solar flare happens. You got no computer. Your car doesn't run. Your cell phone is dead. If you still wear a watch, it's probably digital and it doesn't work. Most people just use their phones, but you get on the list, right? So imagine you've collected, 20 or 30 antique pocket watches from, before 1950. There's some beautiful, gosh. I mean, there are so many. Elgins. Elgins are always a bargain, but Selgin. They made some incredible brass and silver and gold-plated watches that they used to give out like to railroad employees and such. But then there are, Cartier and more the brands you would know. Let's say you spent, I don't know, $500 collecting pocket watches, maybe more, maybe less. Maybe you only spent 100 collecting pocket watches. Well, if there was a solar flare, those suckers would suddenly be worth like a lot. Okay, I mean that would be like the investment of a lifetime. And the same is true of basically anything analog, anything that's not digital, that doesn't. Well, I shouldn't even say analog. I mean mechanical. Anything that doesn't rely on electricity and circuits. In a situation like that, one of the most valuable things you could have would be like a cast iron frying pan or an old cast iron, again, hand well pump, a well pump to actually pump water. I grew up using one. My grandfather had one. You prime it by pouring a bucket in, and then you just start working the handle, and it starts pulling water up. That can be used for a well, or it can also be used with a cistern. If you just had rain barrels, you could use an old hand pump to pump that water up to, say, your upstairs bathroom or something. Um, Siphons, so many things, because you eventually something's going to happen and knock the power out. Whether it's a hurricane or an earthquake or a solar flare or war with Russia or something, or China. That's a bigger threat, actually, China, um, because they already have embedded the U.S. government. Christopher Wray, the FBI, says they have brought tens of thousands of soldiers, troops into our country who are embedded and ready to take out our electronic grid and our communications. And I mean, it will be. This isn't conspiracy. This was literally congressional testimony of what, last week or the week before. Uh, you better be preparing for. I always say, learn to use medicinal herbs. Learn to grow and your own food and harvest from the wild. That's what I'm all about. Also store some water, store some fuel. Be ready in case something happens. This is all legitimately part of a preparedness lifestyle, which is no longer, crazy zombie apocalypse stuff. The FBI, the head of the FBI said China has embedded tens of thousands of fighting age males, essentially soldiers, who are ready to attack our infrastructure if we get into a conflict with China. That's that's no longer crazy talk. But meanwhile, a natural disaster could do the exact same thing. A snowstorm, an ice storm can knock power out for a few weeks. Think about it. And people, like I say, a lot of people tell you the answer is buy gold or buy cryptocurrency. I have a big problem with that. And I'm going to get in herbs in a minute, but I do need to mention this. A few years ago, back around '08, when things were bad, and I was having, my business went under in the blink of an eye, and I was almost homeless. I had to pay off $250,000 in debt, and I almost lost the house, and I was literally, it was really bad. Um, Sold everything I could, worked every lousy job I could, but at about that time, I had taken a contract job, and I worked a good 2 months, and I worked really hard, and the guy decided not to pay me. Yeah, literally. I worked, and he said, "You don't like it, sue me." And so I'm out of town, like 5 hours from home, and my paycheck didn't come because the guy refused to pay me. I eventually got the money. I had to get pretty threatening, actually. I had to let him know. I got nothing left to lose. You know, if you don't pay me, it's going to get really bad for you. And I don't care if I have to go the legal way or the illegal way. You're going to pay me what you owe me. And, I'm a big old hillbilly. And he was, a little old man, fat old man. And he realized that he consulted with his attorney. And his attorney said if he takes you to court, he's going to get the money. But you better realize this guy's not going to take you to court. He's going to get it from you one way or the other. And, yeah, at that point, I would have done what I had to do. But anyway, I'm out of town, and my paycheck didn't come, and my bank account's essentially zeroed out because I just paid my bills, right? So I can't go to the ATM and get money. I didn't have a credit card because I'd paid off my credit cards. I had no accessibility to debt. So literally the cash I had was the cash I had. And a hurricane hit. And I had to get home, and I was 5 hours away, and I didn't have gas to put in my car. I didn't have money to buy food, gas, anything. And power's going out at places. Gas pumps aren't working. You couldn't get money from AT. You couldn't go to like a grocery store and get cash back. You couldn't get anything. And so the cash I had in my pocket was all I had. And what I did, I actually went and I got like all the canned goods, everything I could, items that had, anything that hadn't been opened. And I went to a grocery store and a couple other stores, and I returned everything I had bought over the past couple of weeks that I hadn't opened for cash. And a dollar here and a dollar here and a dollar here, put gas in my vehicle to go home, food on the table, and some kerosene to put in the kerosene heater because it was cold in the mountains. And that was it. Now, imagine just for a moment if you took everybody's advice and you put all your money in gold or cryptocurrency, and that hurricane hit, and you didn't have cash reserves, and you didn't have access to a credit card. You would have to go to someone and sell your gold. In a bad situation, no way to get home. And, you couldn't use your cryptocurrency because power's out, right? I had been collecting silver coins for a long time. When I got into that situation, before I went and started returning all those canned goods and everything I could return, clothing, you name it, right? If it hadn't been open, I took it back to the store to get cash. I took my valuable coins, and the coin dealer, was not open. I had to go to a bank and take, just say Mercury dimes, right? Which were worth, $1 to $4 a piece, depending on their condition, and turn them in at face value for 10 cents per dime. I had to take silver dollars that were worth $40 and give them to the bank for $1 a piece because I had to make a house payment. And the guy had left me stranded. He didn't pay his bill. I took about $2,000 worth of silver coins to make a $800 house payment with all the cash I had on hand, and then had to return canned goods and such to put gas in the truck. So if someone tells you you need to protect yourself by investing in gold and precious metals and cryptocurrency, that's fine in the long run if you're looking at investments. When the crap actually hits the fan, you need cash. You need cash money. And if they go to a digital dollar, you're screwed. Because literally if you can't access your cell phone and you can't access an ATM and you can't do Easy Pay or whatever, Easy Pass, you're screwed. We have to have hard money currency. And I'm going to tell you, before you ever think about investing in whatever they say to hedge against collapse or whatever, you need cash money on hand. Most people right now are living paycheck to paycheck, and 60% of Americans don't even have access to $1,000 cash. You're living entirely on credit. What happens when you're living entirely on credit and you can't use your credit card? We're going to get into herbs, and this is the point of the show, but if you don't think, you need a few $100s cash on hand, cash money, paper money, stuck away somewhere in your home, on your person, because you don't know what can happen. And until you've been through that, imagine the people when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans. There were people who, their houses were gone, they lost their birth certificate, they lost their driver's license, they couldn't even prove who they were to go to the bank and get money, or to apply for a job, or rent an apartment. They couldn't prove who they were. You need your documents safe, and you need some cash on hand. Prioritize that along with food, water, and fuel. Shelter. Absolutely prioritize that. You're not being a crazy prepper. You're being a person who's prepared for just the curveballs life throws at you. Have cash on hand for an emergency. All right, so anyway, let's get into the herbs. I don't need to think about stuff from the past. I have done my best to lay it down, and laid down it's going to be. So let's talk about black locust flowers. Now, locust trees they're everywhere in the mountains where I live. Excellent wood, one of the very best woods you can use for lumber, for carving. People especially like them for fence posts, because black locust fence posts will not rot. You can just put them straight in the ground, and they don't rot. They're great. They have wonderful sweet-smelling flowers, and the flowers have been fried up as fritters in the Appalachian Mountains for generations. People make them basically either with a pancake batter or a cornbread batter. Other parts of the tree are toxic, though. They have some toxicity. Some people say you can eat some of it's a leguminous tree, so it basically has big bean pods, and some people say they're edible to an extent, but technically they're poisonous, so I don't do that. But the flowers are really good. Now, when it comes to honey locust is an entirely different tree. It's a bigger tree to start with, and it has a wonderful edible sugars in the bean pods. The sugars, they're almost like caramel. Honey locust pods are almost like literally a natural caramel, and they've been eaten and enjoyed. They're closely related to the carob tree. They've been eaten and enjoyed for thousands of years. You can make beer out of honey locust pods. So totally different tree, absolutely. But when we're looking at the black locust, we're mostly looking at the flowers, okay? Flowers are similar to redbud. I've discussed redbud before. We'll talk about it again. Kind of tastes like sweet garden peas. But the honey locust has a little more perfume to its flower. The scent's sweet, and it has sort of a vanilla type scent. Sort of like a gardenia, very sweet, very nice. And you can make, like I said, the fritters, you can put them in a pancake batter or a cornmeal batter, fry them up. They're delicious. They're really, people have been living, it's been a survival food in the mountains, but it's also been something that people look forward to for as long as people have been here, Well, I wouldn't say it's, okay, let me give it a little caveat. I'm not sure the Cherokee actually deep fried fritters with cornmeal or flour. Of course, they didn't have flour out of black locust flowers, but they did eat the flowers. The fritters probably came in more with the English and Scots Irish and German, probably especially the German settlers, because they like to make fritters out of just about anything. But people have enjoyed it. But as it has that wonderful kind of vanilla scent, you can make a great syrup out of it. Just like I've mentioned before with other flowers, you just cook them down with some sugar and water, and it makes almost like a honey. You can use it to flavor just about anything. For ice cream, you can make a black locust ice cream, which is just going to blow your mind. It's really good. You can use it as pancake syrup. You can use it as syrup for the fritters you made out of other blossoms. Just fantastic. Now, my tastes tend to run a little more toward the savory side. So I like to take the flowers, especially when they're just at the bud stage, that maybe they're just beginning to open or they haven't opened quite yet, And I like to mix them with more savory herbs and some fat and cook them as a vegetable. I mean, literally just with cooked alone with just oil and salt as a side dish, they're not bad. Really good with some fried fish or some poached fish, really, really good actually. But they're much better if you combine them with some wild onions, shallots, chives, ramps, as always. Get that aromatic element and a little of a bitter. They have a bitterness to them and a sweetness. So you kind of get the savory along with the bitter, the sweet. If you think about the herbs de Provence, that's a classic French combination of Mediterranean herbs like oregano, rosemary, etc. But it usually, at least in America, includes lavender. Now, lavender is aromatic and bitter. So if you think of your locust flowers kind of as a not quite as bitter, but as with the aromatic quality at least of lavender, and maybe you throw in something a little bitter like some forsythia flowers, you got a great combination. You can cook that up with some fat and onion. You can throw some parsley in there. Mix it with some peas, some garden peas. I mean, that's just going to be a perfect complement because they have such a similar flavor. Red bud blossoms, obviously. Um, you know, um, what I really like to do is get some, whether it's peas or some good green beans. Just mix it together, cook in some olive oil, a little splash of lemon juice, some salt. Excellent. As I said, really goes well with fish. I'm not that big a fan of trout almondine. That actually is probably the most common way trout served in restaurants. But really, once I realized I could bread and fry trout, which is mild, in some butter and olive oil, and then throw in some herbs and blossoms like black locust flowers and some red buds and some chopped nuts. Now, I use a lot of pecans. Pecans is my favorite. Black walnuts, fantastic. Hickory nuts, if you got the patience to shell them, they're really difficult. Almonds, would obviously be more familiar to people who've had trout almondine, but I like to do fried trout with, some nuts and some of these flowers and some herbs and some sauteed mushrooms and maybe a few capers or pickled dandelion or nasturtium blossoms, which are just like capers. A little bit of white wine, salt and pepper. Yeah, like I said, forsythia's got a nice bitterness. I would definitely throw that in there. And you get that combination of like sweet and savory and um, bitter and sour and a little bit of perfumey from the flowers and a little bit, it just works. I am telling you, that really works. You pair that with a good glass of white wine and have some nice crusty bread to kind of soak up all the butter and herb wine sauce you've made in the pan. Let me tell you, that is eating. I mean, that's kind of the thing I'm looking at making in the spring. I might do some asparagus tips with it, or some fiddlehead ferns, and I mean that is fantastic. I'll have a meal like that, and I say that's why I live here. I mean, seriously. I mean, it's restaurant quality, but it's super easy to make at home. You can absolutely do the same thing without breading, maybe some poultry. You could do some chicken breast. You could do quail, squab. I'm a big fan of squab, which is just young pigeons. And pigeons actually quite good. Dove, absolutely doves are fantastic. Like I said, it's a restaurant quality dish, but you're not going to find that on any restaurant menu. You're going to have to learn to make it yourself, and it's going to blow your mind, and it's going to blow away anyone who tries it. So, I mean, as always, just do it to your taste. Be careful not to burn the nuts. Nuts burn very easily. Don't burn the garlic. Always cook your onions through before you ever put your garlic in. That's kind of the way you judge when to put the garlic in. Use your nose. Whatever herbs you like. If it smells good, use it. Flowers, when it comes to edible flowers, it can be rose petals. Definitely, that's a classic with quail. A little bit of honey, a little bit of wine. I mean, that's one of the great tastes of Spain. It can be nasturtiums, which are peppery. Definitely the locust flowers. Definitely just a few forsythia blossoms or lavender for the bitterness. Um, you know, as long as you don't burn the nuts or the garlic or anything like that, I would be hard pressed to recommend a better dish. I mean, it's just fantastic. All right, so now let's get into the medicinal herb. And this one is euphorbia. Now, euphorbia is it's a large family. Most euphorbias, if not all, contain some level of toxicity. So I'm going to give that big, just warning. Don't use a euphorbia unless you know what it is and unless you know how to use it. That said, they're very widespread. And native to my region is Euphorbia hirta, or hirta, Hirta. It's called in folk medicine asthma plant. It's also another one called snakeweed. I've told you there are like, I don't even know, 100 herbs that are called snakeweed, snake plant, rattlesnake, this and that. Usually these are herbs that the European settlers learned from Native Americans. And one of the things they said is it's good for snake bite, so it became known as a snake plant. But Euphorbia hirta, which, if I remember correctly, does that mean hairy? Or is that hirsuta? I don't know. But anyway, also known as asthma plant. So we're going to talk about that. Euphorbia hyssofolia. That's hyssop surge. Means it has leaves like a hyssop. Euphorbia lathrius, Lathyris, known as caper spurge, or gopher spurge, or even sassy jack. I mean, these things come under all kinds of weird names. Euphorbia maculata, Euphorbia nutans, Euphorbia peplis, Euphorbia prostrata. All right, you're starting to learn Latin. What do you think that means? It means it's prostrate. It spreads across the ground, right? Easy, right? Euphorbia serpens. Now, what would that mean? Serpens, same word as serpent. It means creeping. So anyway, euphorbias. Dioscorides wrote of several euphorbias, but we don't know which one was which. So I'm not going to even quote them. If you go to De Materia Medica, you can read what Dioscorides wrote about euphorbias, but again, we don't know which one he was using, and some of these can make you sick and some can actually kill you. So we're going to be a little more careful with euphorbias. Also known as spurge. Spurge is the common name, and if you've ever bought spurge from a garden center, they'll probably tell you this plant is poisonous, right? Let's look at what Miss Greaves said. The medicinal properties of the family depend chiefly upon two classes of constituents. First, fixed oils, or fatty acids freed from decomposition, typical properties of which are castor oil. The castor plant, one of the most deadly plants on earth, right? Well, castor oil is one of these. Croton oil. Croton's very, nice ornamental plants. There are drying oils used in artist paints. I mean, it's used, in many, many ways, from rubber to you name it, right? They're Chinese for they're all the milky juices, but there are many that have properties like ipecac, the drug that the plant property that makes you vomit. Again, euphorbias comprise nearly 2,000 species. I'm reading from what she said here. And these species yield a milky juice. Some are herbaceous and shrubby with or without leaves. The leafless variety flourishing in African deserts like cactus and have spiny stems. I mean, they look as different as can be. I mean, honestly. Up by the creek where I gather ramps, one whole side of the bank is nothing but spurge. An ornamental variety that got out of somebody's yard. Looks absolutely nothing like croton. It looks absolutely nothing like castor bean. They're just a really big family. But let's get into some of the more medicinal ones. What's called official spurge is Euphorbia resinifera, or Euphorbia officinarum, goes by many names. She says the milky juice is collected from the incisions made in its branches and is so acrid that it burns the fingers. It's dried in the sun in Morocco at the time of her writing this in the 1930s, and was mainly used as an ingredient in paint. But it had the medicinal actions of, prior to this point, actually she said in the 1930s, doctors were no longer using it, but there may be a time when we need to know this stuff if we don't have access to doctors. It is an irritant, emetic, and cathartic. What does that mean? Well, it means it's going to give you violent vomiting and diarrhea. Why would you want that? Well, maybe you ate something poisonous, right? Okay, that's the only time you'd really want to use an irritant emetic and cathartic. Mayapple would fall into the same, American mandrake. Gonna really make you uncomfortable as it does its job. But applied to the skin, it's used as a vesicant, which means it kind of reddens and it makes the veins show. It irritates the skin in a way that can be useful. At this time, it was mainly used in veterinary practice. It has been used in dropsy, that's edema, retaining fluid, and it's an ingredient in a plaster for gout. It was also used in chronic ear, eye, or brain complaints. Not sure, combined with convolvularia malaeus. What's that? It's morning glory. But it was discontinued. But as for several of the other spurges, she called one pill-bearing spurge, Epilobium pilulifera. No, I'm sorry, Euphorbia pilulifera, known as asthmaweed. This is one that we wanted to talk about, or cat's hair. Interesting. It is common in all tropical countries, and of course, the American South is considered subtropical until you get to South Georgia, and then you start getting to the tropical. Louisiana, very tropical, parts of Mississippi, etc. Its principal constituents are resins, and which is somewhat waxy. I'm just kind of summarizing here. It has been utilized with a certain success in treatment of subacute chronic inflammations of the respiratory duct. We're talking bronchial issues. Toxic doses, however, have killed small animals through failure of respiration, so it suppresses respiration. The decoction taken in asthmatic conditions, chronic bronchitis, and emphysema, the tincture being used in coryza and hay fever. I'm not going to get into the dose because it's a little dangerous, obviously. But another member of the family is white epicuana, or ipecac, used to make you throw up. If your kid eats something poisonous, you get the ipecac, right? One called white purslane, which is actually corrallata. It's not a true purslane. It does grow around here. It's native to North America, and especially the eastern part of the country. Also used as an emetic like ipecac. The caper spurge, which is another one that grows around here, has a milky juice of an acrid nature. Its seeds yield an abundance of fine, clear oil called euphorbia. She tells you how to make the euphorbia. The oil, though, is a violent poison, producing violent purgation, again, throwing up and diarrhea and all that, and having an irritating effect upon the mucous membrane and intestinal canal, especially on the larger intestines. So this one's really going to give you diarrhea, actually. I don't know why you'd want to use this. But apparently it was popular in France as sort of a more powerful alternative to castor oil, another plant, a similar plant in the same family. It's going to make you go, but this one's going to really get you going. There's another one, Euphorbia hypericifolia, which she mentions, also native to here. It's good for diarrhea and dysentery, so it would do the opposite. It would, slow things down, and also has narcotic properties. Sounds great, right? Unfortunately, it can cause temporary blindness. So we'll go on to spotted spurge, which is another one that grows very commonly around here. Immaculata. It was popular among the eclectics and homeopaths. It has been used in cholera, diarrhea, dysentery in the form of an infusion of the leaves. Contains resins and tannins and is a valuable astringent. So this is another one that would slow things down, dry things up. Probably a little bit better, a little bit safer than some of the others. Also used for leukorrhea, which is a vaginal discharge. Leafy spurge, that's actually Esula, I think Linnaeus, if I remember correctly. Actually, there's several that fall into that category. I'm not going to get into all of them. But they have been used similarly Um, there's one called Heterodoxa from Brazil, which was found to be effective for cancerous and syphilitic ulcers. Um, Prostrata, which is one we've mentioned. This is one that's called, snake plant or whatever. She says specifically used against the bite of rattlesnakes, spiders, etc. The juice being used. So the juice had some way of probably counteracting the necrotizing venom of those poisonous creatures. E. parvifolia and hirta, those are also common around here. And one that grows in Spain called canacense, E. canacense. The similarly used to the linarius, which we mentioned was the European, what was spotted spurge, I think, used for syphilitic ulcers. And she said it was formerly much used in syphilis before the introduction of mercury, which of course is very poisonous and not used anymore. So that's one, we might want to look at again. She said it was used in Ireland for stupefying fish. You could actually use it as a fish poison, stun fish, and used similarly in Brazil. And actually, in Brazil, they would also use the Euphorbia continifolia as to poison their arrows, poison arrows. So, these plants have amazing uses, actually. She goes on quite a bit about many. I think we've covered all, though, that grow in the United States. Several of them were used to remove warts and corns. Many plants that have a milky sap can be used in that way. We often use sanguinaria in the mountains. This bloodroot, it's a milky sap, but it's actually blood red. It's not white like the sap of wild lettuce, which is one you might use, or even dandelion. You could use similarly milkweed. Certainly milkweed has been used that way a lot. She said they were the same thing could be used for toothache, but it was acrid and could cause some damage to the gums. Let's see if I can find some modern use here. Yeah. Asthma weed, that's the one we started out talking about. Plants for Future says asthma weed has traditionally been used in Asia to treat bronchitic asthma. I didn't pronounce that right. Bronchial asthma and laryngeal spasm. It has an antispasmodic quality. Though in modern herbalism, it is used more in the treatment of intestinal amoebic dysentery. However, it should not be used without expert guidance, since large doses can cause gastrointestinal irritation, nausea, and vomiting, as most of the spurges do. The plant is carminative, means help cells digestion. I wouldn't use it that way. Depurative, diuretic, febrifuge for fevers. Again, probably wouldn't use it that way. Galactagogue stimulates lactation. Purgative and vermifuge, which obviously anything that's going to make you have explosive diarrhea like that might be good for getting the worms out of your system. That's what vermifuge means, by the way. It gets rid of intestinal parasites. It talks about how to harvest it. It's the above ground stalks, the stems, especially used for asthma and bronchitis and other lung complaints. The herb relaxes the bronchioles, but apparently depresses heart and general respiration. So that's how that one can be dangerous. Several herbs do that. That's called the narcotic effect of the herb. And they can actually be quite pleasant, but relaxing. They can help you sleep, relax your muscles, lower your heart rate, help with blood pressure. But obviously a little too much can kill you, as in the case of, the most familiar of those herbs would be digitalis, foxglove. A little too much will kill you. Same with lily of the valley. Probably the safest, the one I use most, which I consider to be safe, but I should probably warn you that you wouldn't want to take too much of that either, is Ajuga reptens, bugleweed. That's a really good sedative or slightly narcotic herb for the cardiovascular and respiratory system. And it's actually one I use a lot. I find it to be a pleasant herb, relaxing, good for the liver, good for digestion, very bitter. And I consider it safe. I'm not telling you to consider it safe. Let's see. They said to counteract the depressed heart and respiration in the anti-asthmatic properties of this herb for using that. It would be combine it with lobelia inflata, which has sort of an effect like tobacco. Lobelia and tobacco are very similar, and so that kind of counteracted. But anyway, probably shouldn't use it that way. But the whole plant could be used as a decoction and used in the treatment of athlete's foot. Very good to know. Certain enteritis and skin conditions, and also for syphilis and dysentery, and the sap applied to warts to get rid of the wart. Known hazards, obviously, it can be dangerous, as can all, if not most if not all of the euphorbias. The sap contains latex, which is toxic, ingested, and highly irritant. It can also cause photosensitivity of the skin. It can cause you to become essentially sunburned more easily, and severe inflammation, especially in the contact with eyes or open cuts. And the toxicity can remain high even in dried plant material. So this is one you really want to know what you're doing with. And the sap could also be slightly carcinogenic. So the caper spurge, which is the other one that grows around here wild a lot, was used in the past as a violent purgative. It's going to give you serious diarrhea and probably make you throw up too. Whilst, I love the way they use that whilst in England, the rubefacient action of the leaves, that means it rends the skin, was employed by beggars to raise unsightly skin sores on the skin to elicit pity and therefore obtain more money. So there's another slightly questionable use. They would make it look like they had big red sores on their skin to make people, more sympathetic, to give them more money. But all parts of the plant are emetic and purgative, meaning, again, vomiting and diarrhea, and is now considered too toxic to be used medicinally. But as I always say, we need to know the plants in case we need them and we have no other options. Latex of the stems has been used externally to remove corns and warts and such, but is irritant, and there are better options. The seed is diuretic, parasiticide. Remember I said it was vermifuge, it would help get rid of intestinal parasites? There you go. Purgative has been used in the treatment of dropsy, edema, tumors, amenorrhea, I can never pronounce this, schistosomiosis. Yes, that's even harder than pronouncing Natchitoches, Louisiana, which is spelled Natchitoches, but this is schistosomiosis. Anyway, scabies and snake bites. Did I ever tell you that story? Natchitoches has this meat pie festival, and people come from all over for it. A lady goes down there, and she and her husband are arguing about how to pronounce the name because they're not from Louisiana. And like I said, it's not spelled Natchitoches. It's spelled something like Natchitoches or something. And they stop into a fast food joint to use the bathroom. And she goes up to the girl at the counter and says, "How y'all pronounce the name of this place?" The girl says, "Burger King." Anyway, she said, "I like to slap that girl." Anyway, the fresh seed has anti-tumor action, effective against acute lymphocytic and granulocytic leukemia. It has anti-cancer activity. This is one of the reasons we need to know this plant, and a lot more research has to be done into it. It's antiseptic, emetic, cathartic, and purgative, used with caution. One seed capsule is said to have caused catharsis and even to cause miscarriage. So we've talked about the hazards. The saps, irritant, inflammatory, etc. And could even be carcinogenic, even though it has anti-cancer properties. I'm just going to sum it up. Cloverleaf Farms Herbal Encyclopedia, which is one of my favorite websites, says many euphorbia species are used as arrow poisons and are not for human health. Therefore, proper identification and knowledgeable usage is of vital importance. The caper spurge is a toxic plant and should not be used under any circumstances. And see, that's when we were just talking about plants for a future giving its medicinal use. They say don't use it at all. I say don't use it at all. But some can. Asthma spurge being one of them. It is found throughout tropical areas, probably native originally to India and Australia. They name a couple others. A Chinese one called Daji. Flowering spurge, also used. That's, I think, the English one we were talking about. Says, as its name suggests, the asthma spurge has a traditional usage in treating asthma. The Cherokee used the related Immaculata, another one we mentioned is going around here, to treat sore nipples and skin conditions. Many related species were used for constipation. For thousands of years, caper spurge was taken as a violent purge, indicating how medicine has changed. Purging was the first resort of many traditional medicinal systems, and never more so than in Western medicine in the 1800s. I mean, seriously, I mean, everything started with laxatives. Caper seeds were commonly used, but an oil excreted from them was also in very small doses. Was also used in very small doses, but it is highly toxic. Actually, castor oil is mild, natural, and probably one of the best laxatives you can have if you have to take a laxative. Yeah, psyllium and all that, but the related castor plant, castor oil, even though you can make the most deadly poison on earth from it, which is ricin, the castor oil is probably among the most gentle and safe of laxatives. So I don't use it. I actually, if I have to have something, I would have 2 cups of kombucha. 2 cups of kombucha are absolutely as purgative as castor oil and much better for your gut health. 1 cup will keep, everything healthy in your gut flora. 2 cups, expect to stay home. I'm just saying. In the past, the latex milky sap of caper spurge was used as a depilatory, that means hair removal, and to remove corns. They mentioned that the Aztecs used it for intestinal worms. It's actually named after a Greek physician, Euphorbion. So apparently it was a pretty popular laxative herb used in ancient Greek. The flowering spurge was used by the Native American tribe, the Mesquaquies. I don't know, Mesquaquies. That's what it looks like to me. The root was boiled in water and drunk before breakfast as a laxative. It was also used to treat rheumatism. Pine leaf spurge, that's Euphorbia seripalifiolia, I think, was used by the Omaha and Ponca tribes to increase milk flow in nursing mothers and for abdominal bloating in children. The Lakota used a different species for the same purpose. And apparently both tribes were very familiar with the doctrine of signatures, which says you can tell what an herb does by its properties, and the milky sap, they believed, would help increase the milk in nursing mothers, and obviously not by coincidence, it does. I don't consider doctrine of signatures at all to be superstition. I think God gave us a plant language we can understand if we learn to read it, if we learn to identify it. So officially, asthma spurge is anti-amoebic, anti-spasmodic, anti-inflammatory, antiseptic, anti-asthmatic, antispectorate, sedative. Caper spurge is a violent purgative. Daji is purgative. Flowering spurge is diaphoretic, expectorant, a strong emetic. But all of them, be real careful. Only use the right one. Be sure of your identification. Start with botany in a day. That's the best way to learn to identify plants. And I guess, in my opinion, most of these should be considered as a last resort, an emergency herb. Now, I have very bad asthma. I developed it at the age of about 3 or 4, and it put me in the hospital a lot when I was a kid. It's a hereditary form of asthma. So for me, I know asthma spurge. I know how to identify it, and I know how to use it if I need it. Okay? As Cloverleaf Farm says, it's mildly sedating and expectorant. It has the ability to relax bronchial tubes and ease breathing, and makes a good remedy for bronchial asthma. That's what I have, is bronchial asthma. It's also used for bronchitis and other respiratory tract conditions. Usually it's taken along with other anti-asthmatic herbs, such as gumweed, which is a great, definitely my go-to above asthma spurge. It's one of the best expectorant herbs. And lobelia, which is another one I would use absolutely before I would ever touch a spurge. Okay? But that combination of gumweed and lobelia is the traditional with asthma spurge, and it is very effective. It's just one you really need to learn and research and use with caution. Yeah, it was used by many early settlers and Indian tribes for amoebic dysentery. They say in Mexico, an infusion of leaves is still used today for inflammation of the digestive tract and diarrhea, but it can be toxic if improperly used, as with all the spurges. So I think I'm going to leave it there. Look at the spurges as, one, they're very common. You need to identify this plant, if for no other reason, so you don't accidentally eat it thinking it's something else, and your kids don't eat it. I think you should always identify the poisonous plants that grow around you so they don't get, unintentionally ingested. But definitely for emergency medicine, definitely for bad situations where you may not be able to go to a doctor. Some of these are actually quite useful, from everything from asthma to as a laxative, to stop diarrhea, to take off warts, to increase mother's milk. They're really very useful plants, but they all, as far as I know, do have at least potential toxicity. These are often were used, not so much anymore, to bring on delayed menstruation. There are many reasons you may want to use these plants, but you need to know them very well. And anyway, that's my disclaimer. The official disclaimer will run in just a moment. So y'all have a good one. I do hope you enjoy some, at least some black locust flower fritters. They are an absolute delicacy. I mean, literally, this is something people look forward to all year where I live. But learn to use the plants around you in whatever way is appropriate, because, when God made the world, it says in the Bible, he looked at it and said it was good. There's no such thing as a bad plant. There's no evil plant. Every plant has its use. And it's up to us as the stewards of this earth to learn about those plants, to protect them, to grow them, and to use them. So anyway, y'all have a great week. I'll talk to you next time. Please remember to recommend my podcast whenever and wherever you can.